5 questions. Thank you. Yes, Mada Wangari, Gilgil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Karemba, you should take the supplementaries. When it's done, I'll give you an opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. And I also want to join Honorable Hassan in noting that this issue was not a matter of Kericho. It was a national issue. It was an international issue. And matters sexual assault, Mr. Speaker, are not easy even for the women to report. And that is why you would see no direct complainant, because they fear for their lives, they fear for their families, they even fear losing their jobs, which are very scarce, Mr. Speaker. But my follow-up question, Mr. Speaker, is that we saw in that BBC documentary or expose that some same people who actually were harassing these women were reciting the anti-harassment laws in the companies. So my question would be, and follow-up question would be, what has these two companies done at all in terms of implementing their own regulations, in terms of summoning those managers, Mr. Speaker, and more importantly, the trust to our institutions, the DCI, just from that BBC documentary, and we can get even that reporter who is a Kenyan to actually be under oath. Can that serve as a way of starting instituting measures to stem this very rampant issue in that region? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Karemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there was one person, Mr. John Chepochok, who was notoriously mentioned in the submissions. And Mr. Speaker, I wish to inform the House that the James Finley Company suspended one John Chepochok. He was contracted to look for workers. And he was doing that for a couple of years from 2017. But since after the expos, his services were stopped. And then also, Mr. Speaker, the James Finley decided now to absorb all the employees and to employ them without contracting. So that is one of the decisions that was arrived at by the James Finley. At the Ekatera company, which is formerly Unilever, we found that the management was doing something. There were cases that had been reported, but each of those cases, Mr. Speaker, had been reported with the criminal investigations offices, and some were matters in court, some had been already dealt with, and others are cases that are ongoing in court. So we found out that this issue of the BBC expose was not the only issue that had been reported, but several other cases had been reported. Some have already been dealt with, while others are ongoing. Then also, I want to associate myself with the sentiment from the Honourable Member from Kamukoji that, Mr. Speaker, it is time now the CSS come here, because in their submissions, we found out that they are giving us very inadequate details. So when they come here, we will be able to ask them supplementary questions, and I don't think they will be coming here without being adequately prepared. Mr. Speaker, I have heard from the Honorable Martha, and it is true. While the women, the workers, and mostly the women in these two companies were agreeing with us that there has been sexual exploitation and harassment in those two companies, most of them who even have contracted HIV were not willing to come out and report. And the reason was they believe that if they report, they will be fired. Secondly, stigmatization. No one wants to be seen on TV and in the screens as having been one of the victims. But I also want to agree with the Honourable, because that is also contained in our report, which will be tabled shortly and possibly tomorrow, that investigations through our able DCI officers should begin with the person who did the expose. We are considering requesting him to be the person to be complained, so that the process of prosecuting those accused can begin, since right now we do not have anyone complaining. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Yes.